University of Calgary in 2011 articulated a strategic direction for the next 5 years, which contains the ambition to become a top 5 research university in Canada and to be known as a global intellectual hub in Canada's most enterprising city. This spirited vision is captured in the slogan, "Eyes High," which reflects the determination of the university community and the citizens of Calgary to look far up and dream very big. No Calgarian embodies this spirit of optimism and determination more vividly than John R. Jack Perraton. As chair of the Board of Governors and 9th Chancellor of the University of Calgary, he contributed more than 12 years of generous leadership. He has made a tireless contribution to the City of Calgary, the province of Alberta, and his country. Mr. Perraton served as CEO of the Canada 2005 Expo Corporation, which led Canada's bid for Expo 2005. He has represented Alberta as Honorary Consul General to the Republic of Korea. He was named Calgary's Citizen of the Year in 1997 and admitted as a member of the Order of Canada in 2001. Perhaps the greatest gifts Mr. Perraton bestowed on the University of Calgary were his promotion of academic excellence and his understanding of the essential bond that must exist between the university and its wider community. These ideals are firmly embedded as foundational principles of the University of Calgary's strategic direction. We are grateful for a leader and a benefactor such as Jack Perraton, who, standing in the center of possibility, urged us to lift up our eyes and direct them outward. Eminent Chancellor, I present to you John R. Jack Perraton, Queen's Counsel, eminent leader, honored Canadian, citizen extraordinaire. On behalf of the Senate and the University of Calgary, I invite you to invest him with the degree Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
Jack Perraton, it was 9.5 years ago that you and I stood on this stage, you standing here and I standing there. So it is with a great deal of pleasure that I admit you to the degree Doctor of Laws, honoris causa of the University of Calgary, and grant you all of the rights and privileges, powers and responsibilities pertaining to the degree. Congratulations, Jack.
Thank you very much. Eminent Chancellor Dinning, President Cannon, Chair Black, Chancellors Emeriti Dr. Joanne Cuthbertson and Dr. Brian Norford, President Emeritus Dr. Terry White, past honorary degree recipients Dr. Richard Guy, Dr. Barry Strafford, and Dr. Frank King, graduates, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else here. It's a wonderful pleasure for me to be here. The first thing I would like to do is make a very brief mention about our veterans. I say that because, of course, as we all know, tomorrow's Remembrance Day. We are here celebrating as we are because of the things that our veterans did and that our armed forces do for us today. We owe them a great debt, and I just wanted to acknowledge the obligation which we all have to them. I also would like to extend my congratulations to Dr. Lynn Cowie Falls. She today is being honored with the Order of the University of Calgary. Lynn is a wonderful example of the superb faculty and staff which we have here at the University of Calgary. Lynn demonstrates, particularly in her work with students, how faculty and staff are dedicated to bettering the student experience at the University of Calgary. Lynn, I am honored to share this morning with you, and you are a splendid example of the passion and the talent of so many of the faculty here at the University of Calgary, and congratulations on your award. Let me also say that the people you see here on the platform today represent some of the most generous and capable people which you'll have the pleasure of working with, visiting with, and sharing time with throughout your lives. The administration, faculty, and staff of this institution work tirelessly to provide the best education they possibly can with the resources that they have. They are consummate volunteers in that they do so much more than their mandated jobs would require them to do. I'm very proud of the people that make up this institution. That would also include members of the Board of Governors and the Senate. These are dedicated individuals who give freely of their time to see that this university can reach its full potential. I will also say, note that I mentioned with the resources they are given. Sort of a pet peeve, I guess, especially if you've spent the amount of time which I have at this institution or at any institution that's in the post-secondary business. We need to see to it that in a city like Calgary, province of Alberta, Canada, that we have sufficient funding available to allow post-secondary education to proceed the way it should. There's no reason why anybody in this province should ever not attend a post-secondary institution because of financial matters. There's also no reason why you or any other graduates from this institution or any other post-secondary institution should leave here with the burden of excessive debt. Remember as you go forward that you can affect what our government does, and education along with health care have to be a significant priority. The government will listen only if it becomes a mandate of the people. Advocate for financial support for post-secondary institutions, and hopefully those that follow you will never be burdened with either unattainable cost or excessive debt when they go through. So let me say, it is an honor to be here, tremendous honor. It's a wonderful occasion. I actually missed my convocation from law school. But I was then privileged to participate in many convocations as chancellor and even a few more as chair of the board. Each is a wonderful occasion, and you've heard about that from the chancellor and the president. It's an acknowledgement of an important stepping stone in the lives of you, the graduates. Today is to celebrate your accomplishments, your achievements, a juncture in your life. It is at very least a marker in your life's journey, the beginning of a new part. So we have an opportunity to stop and reflect and celebrate this accomplishment. But we also must pay attention to the fact that what's really important is the new beginning. What's going to happen for each of you? What lays ahead as you move forward? So I asked myself, are there some simple but useful thoughts that I can leave with these graduates? What have I possibly experienced in my life that could be of benefit to you? The answer is that while I've taken on many endeavors, I don't have sort of one major feat or event to share with you, whether it arises out of some particular athletic ability or a particular personal talent, a global event. But I do have a few things that I've learned over the years. And when I say learned, I mean things that I have observed and perhaps know I should have followed, but in many instances did not. Sometimes they came as hindsight, and sometimes I just didn't. In other words, do as I say, not as I do. I was blessed in that my parents provided a loving and nurturing home for me. My dad used to always say to me, if you're going to take something on, see it through and don't quit. It became one of the main themes in my life. It's very similar. See it through is tempered with the caveat in relation to matters of honor and good sense, as Winston Churchill said in his never, 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 never give up speech to Harrow School in 1941. It became something which permeated my thinking whenever I would consider a decision. If I was going to take it on, I needed to ensure that I was prepared to see it through. While we can never be certain of the overall implications of a decision to take something on, it is necessary to ensure that we are, in fact, prepared to see it through regardless. In making any decision, there's a fundamental aspect which you are all well aware of, but which you need to constantly remember. The decisions which you make from time to time are based on your reality as it exists at that moment in time. A day, a week, a month, a year, or 20 years later, your reality is not the same. Much as you may think you can go back and revisit your decision and perhaps critique it, you cannot. You can never put yourself into the position of the reality that existed at the time you made your decision. So many things that are clearly evident later were not evident or did not even exist at the time you made that decision. In many instances, you won't even be able to identify the differences because many of them will be so ingrained now that you'd be unable to appreciate that they did not exist or you were not aware of them at the time you made the decision. The decision that I'm always tempted to review was back in 1969 when I decided to leave the oil and gas industry as a landman and go to law school. I always think, would I have ridden the oncoming, but then to me as yet unseen oil and gas wave to untold riches? Would I have crashed and burned? I don't know. But I do know that based on the reality that I lived in at that moment in time and the information I had at my disposal, I made the right decision for myself. An even better example of this came the other day when I was watching BNN, and they interviewed a gentleman named Ronald Wayne. Now, many of you will know this gentleman, and you'll know that he entered into an arrangement with two other individuals in the early 70s to start up a company where the other two would each hold 45% of the company, and he would hold 10%. About 10 days after they made this arrangement, he decided that based on the reality in his life at that time, it really wasn't going to work for him, and he was going to leave. So Mr. Wayne sold his 10% interest for $800 US. He sold it to the other two participants who were Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, and the company, of course, was Apple. 10% of Apple today would be worth $37 billion. So the inevitable question put to Mr. Wayne was, regrets. What regrets do you have having made that decision? He stated that unequivocally he had no regrets. He stated that he always expected that Apple would be successful, but that he made the decision based on the information he had at the time, his then position in life, which included his business experience and another not-so-good adventure in business, and that he decided that it wasn't for him, he was older, and he couldn't take the risk going forward. He says he never regretted the decision. I'm sure in some form he's maybe questioned that decision, but he recognized that he made it based on his reality at that moment, and he accepts it. We can spend a lifetime second-guessing a decision and pining over what might have been, could have been. Our hindsight might well tell us that the opposite decision would have been brilliant and wonderful, but the actual reality may have been quite the opposite. I fundamentally believe that each of you today has the ability and the training to analyze and critique the decisions you need to make. You will base those decisions on your reality and the facts as they exist for you at the time. And given that you pay attention to what you really want to achieve, and I say that even though some of us, which would be me, still don't really know what we want to achieve in life, and you pay attention to your heart's desires, you will make the right decisions. And those decisions will lead you on the path which is best for you. So, be comfortable with your decisions. Another thing that you need to think about when you make a decision is that things in life are just things. Material things can seem to dominate much of what we think and do. We work and strive to acquire more, to accumulate, and to have. On June 1st of 2010, I was asked to stop in at my doctor's office on my way to speak at the farewell dinner for our beloved Chancellor Cuthbertson. When I met with the doctor, he read from a radiologist's diagnosis, and he told me that apparently I had lung cancer. I was devastated. But I actually did go deliver my speech thinking that I need to allow myself to control my life, and proceeded to address the challenge. It took a bit of time to determine that, in fact, it is not likely cancer, but another type of growth, which I do have in my lung. But for a while, Charlotte and I pondered what this diagnosis might mean for us. Let me assure you that in these circumstances, things take on no relevance whatsoever. And relationships and how we have conducted our lives become paramount. Our minds do not race to say how we will miss the opportunity of enjoying something that we had pursued. Instead, the focus is solely on those who are important to us in our lives and our abbreviated relationship with them. Many of you will have had life-changing experiences. The promise that Charlotte and I made to each other at that time was that we would never forget how we felt at that moment. We would never forget what was truly important to us. We would pay attention to those we love and never forget that they are the most important elements in our life, and they are the most important elements in your life. Also consider in all your decisions the obligation to give back to your community. 3 areas of giving: time, treasure, talent. We've been blessed to live in a country that has an abundance of almost everything. Most of us want for nothing other than maybe a few of the things I just spoke of. But we have to be aware of the consolidation of wealth and poverty in so many areas of the world. These must be addressed and must be dealt with. I ask that you never forget the needs of others, that you work toward equality in all aspects of life, and that you take the time and effort to give back. I don't need to do the "you can make a difference" lecture. You guys know that. You know that you can make a difference. I spent a lot of time taking on causes, many of which you've heard from the university, the Kids Cancer Care Foundation, the Expo bid for 2005. But I can assure you that in each and every one of those cases, I was the recipient of far more benefit than anything I gave. I gained more in self-realization and personal awareness than I could ever have hoped to have gained otherwise. Also remember, in the context of giving back, that your decisions affect others. It's necessary for each of us to pay attention in our lives to those around us. We do not live in isolation. We are part of a greater community, and we need to consider how we interact with that community. We must act ethically and respectfully. I believe that each of you has been exposed to a set of values that demands that you act ethically and morally in relation to your activities. It's fundamental to who you are and to your participation in the community, whether in business or in your personal life. It's so important to pay attention to what you do and to the simple basics of what in each circumstance is right and what in each circumstance is not right. In my profession, there's always the question of acting ethically and properly in our legal dealings. Early in my career, I was provided with a bit of advice which, although at times extreme, I resort to whenever I have a question about the ethical impact of a consideration or a decision. The advice is that if you have to ask the question about whether something is or is not the right thing to do, then the very fact that you have to ask the question provides the answer. You likely should not do it. If you have to question whether what you are about to do is the right thing to do, then all the rationalizing in the world will not justify it if in fact it is not. We do live in a world, unfortunately, where justification and rationalization are constant parts of the decision-making process. The end justifies the means. Our decisions will affect people in different ways. You'll be caught in situations where no matter what you decide, you will negatively affect somebody. These are times when it is absolutely necessary to conduct your due diligence to ensure that you are morally and ethically comfortable with your decision, to consider and respect those who may be negatively affected by it, and do what you can to minimize the negative impact on them. Do not forget nor ignore the implications of your decisions on others. You will not be exempt from this process, but please remember as you go through it, the fact that you have asked yourself the question is perhaps an indication that your decision may not be the morally acceptable one. Always do the right thing. Another matter to consider in your decisions is that you should be cautious of your perceptions. Perceptions do not necessarily equate to reality. An older gentleman at the end of a visit to a doctor was asked if he had anything else that he wanted to bring up, and he said that actually he was concerned that his wife was losing her hearing. The doctor asked him why he didn't discuss it with her, and he said, well, she gets really defensive, so no. So the doctor suggested that he go home, find a time when he could address his wife from a distance, particularly when she couldn't see him, see if there was a response, move up a little closer, address her again, see if there's a response, and finally go right up and talk to her and address the issue. Great, he gets home. Sure enough, there's his wife working way back to him. He walks in the door. He says, "Hi, honey, I'm home. What's for dinner?" No response. He walks halfway across the room and says, "Honey, I'm home. What's for dinner?" No response. So he walks up and says, "Hi, I'm here. What's for dinner?" And she says, "Meatloaf, you deaf old coot. I've told you 3 times." Perception is not reality. Mark Twain is reputed to have responded to a query about what it is that we all live for with the response that it is the good opinion of our neighbors. That should be important to all of us. We need to keep that thought in mind in all that we do. It is not that it should be the only consideration behind our decision, but it should always be there as a part of who we are. The best example of how to treat people was set by the former Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, Lois Hole. I hope many of you had the opportunity of meeting and visiting with Lois because she was absolutely a special purpose. You always knew that she was interested in and focused on you. You received a warm hug in a manner that told you that she really did care, and you received her undivided attention. One convocation here, when she graced us with her presence, was here on stage with us as the Lieutenant Governor. I, as the Chancellor, was greeting the students, as you'll all be greeted by Chancellor Dinning. And as I waited for the next student to come, the student stood there and he looked at me and he went, and I said, "What?" I turned around to look, and there was a lineup of at least 6 students standing, waiting to be greeted by Lois, who was up and giving everyone the special Lois hug, because that's who she was and that's what she did. So what we have to look at is the fact that, while we can't live our life giving everybody hugs, we do have to remember, and we do have to keep in mind the focus that Lois put into every such greeting, and to remember to bring warmth and sincerity to each person that we do greet. In all the decisions that you make and all the things that you do in your life, you will not generally make or do them alone. There are many, many people who will be involved in your life and in your decisions. Life is a team sport. Remember at all times your team members and the impact they've had on your life. Their parents, siblings, teachers, mentors, business partners, community leaders at all levels, the person who fixes your car, everyone you come in contact with. My dad had a little sign in the garage, and he put it over the workbench, and it said, "Everyone is of some use, even if nothing more than to serve as a bad example." I'm hoping that I can avoid that one today. And remember those of you here who have supported these individuals, and remember when they cross the stage and when they get their honors and when their name is mentioned, you recognize them and you stand up and hoot and holler and do whatever you need to do to let them know how proud you are of what they've done here today. And don't be afraid to do that. Have fun. And you here graduating, remember, particularly at the times of your success, those who are responsible for that success. Much of it is yours, but so much more is attributable to the influencers in your life. I am entitled to receive a minuscule part of the degree which has been presented to me here today. The vast majority of it belongs to the people who worked with me, guided me, put up with me, allowed me the room to do the things I did. There are so many who could have helped with so much of what I've done that I couldn't possibly recognize them all. But there is one unbelievably important group that I wish to recognize. It's that group which represents for me the true joy and blessings which I've received in my life. I was fortunate years ago to have met Charlotte, who had the tolerance to accept me into her life and the willful blindness to ignore my many shortcomings and share her life with me. We have 4 beautiful children, each with their own families. Our daughter Stacy Page, her spouse Sheldon, and their 2 boys Carter and Tristan. Our son Trevor Perraton, his spouse Kim, and their 2 boys Ryan and Chase. Our son Chris Perraton, his spouse Glenna, and their daughter Kaya, and their son Jack, who are the little guys making a little bit of noise once in a while. Our daughter Lindsay Perraton, her spouse Chad Tarnick, and they are 8 months pregnant. I also have my sister Marlene Otraholic, her husband Frank, my sister Nancy Berry, and her spouse Albert Rock here. I mention each of these people because they are so important in my life. And whatever I may have accomplished, I have accomplished because of their support and their understanding. About 9 years ago, I was on my way to Halifax, actually to receive my Order of Canada. I was with my wife and our 4 children. I received a phone call on the way to the airport. The call was about a friend of ours who had gone out for a ride with his sons and sons-in-law on their ranch near Claresholm the evening before. He came home tired and absolutely euphoric about the beautiful autumn evening and the trail ride that he'd had with the fellows. He said to his wife that it was one of his most beautiful evenings and concluded by saying to her, "A man couldn't ask for anything more." He went to bed, but he didn't wake up in the morning. And I tell you this because of the beauty to be taken from the story, not the sadness. My wish for each of you is that you stop on many occasions in your life. You take the time to look at where you are, and who you are blessed to share your life with. That you look out at the mountains, the prairies, at your spouse, your child, your grandchild, your life, and you reflect that a person couldn't ask for anything more than this. It's a beautiful life. Live it to the fullest. Never forget to let those around you know how much they mean to you and how important they are in your life. Your life will be full of as much beauty, bliss, harmony, and love as you allow it to have. Recognize it, embrace it, and truly live it. For me, well, my family's here, so I couldn't ask for anything more than this. Thank you, and have a beautiful life.